Hello, and welcome to today's Proven Learning Series. My name is Amanda. I'm a trainer here at Can-Am Systems, and today I'll be walking you through understanding WIP processing in our Proven Accounting web platform. Before we begin today's session, let's review a few housekeeping items. All attendees have been muted during today's session to cut down on background noise. Your videos have automatically been turned off during today's section to avoid any distractions. This session's recording will be available via our PSA Help library, in addition to our company's YouTube channel. Any questions that you have during today's session will need to be directed to our PSA support team, which can be reached at support@canamsys.com. In this session of our Proven Learning Series, we will be discussing the WIP process within our Proven Accounting web platform. We will provide an overview of work in process functions and the power of WIP. We're going to look at the WIP General Ledger asset accounts. We will look at our job type General Ledger accounts and their role in WIP processing. And finally, we will process WIP via our WIP calculator and our WIP revenue tools. WIP refers to the value of goods or services that are in process of being completed. WIP is crucial for accurately reflecting the financial position of a company, especially in restoration, construction, and mitigation industries where projects or production cycles span over time. Two of our most common types of WIP processing are the standard WIP process and our completed job with manual close method. In today's session, we will be reviewing the standard WIP process. In today's session, we will only be reviewing one specific job type and one job type general ledger account. For our example today, we will be using the mitigation job type. In our training database, our mitigation job type has a revenue percentage of 70%. Job types are set up and maintained within our Proven Jobs platform. There are two WIP General Ledger asset accounts. We have our deferred revenue account, which has our revenue to be earned, and our work in process job account. This account contains our job costs to be recognized. Please note your GL account codes may differ from our training database. However, the descriptions should be the same or similar within your own database. Each job type will have a setup of 6 cost of sales accounts and 1 revenue account. Here you can see my job type general ledger accounts are as follows. I have a revenue mitigation water GL account and 6 cost of sales accounts. 1 for materials, labor, overhead, subtrade, equipment rental, and expenses. When the WIP calculator is processed, costs will be transferred from our work in process job asset account to our job type specific GL accounts. Now that we have a bit of understanding of our GL accounts, let's take a look at a job we will be using in today's example. Here we're looking at our mitigation job 0096-MIT. On our job information screen, we can see our job revenue percentage is 70%. And our estimated revenue for this project is $10,334. Now let's take a look at our job dates. At a quick glance, I can see that the job is still in production, as the production close date is missing. Let's take a look at our financials. I can see that our job has some actual costs, but our labor might not be transferred or posted yet, and the job has yet to be invoiced. This job is ready for WIP calculation, but not the WIP revenue accounting close. WIP calculator can be ran at any interval. This process calculates anticipated or earned revenue throughout the life of a job. The anticipated or recognized revenue portion of the WIP calculation entry will be posted to the revenue account as determined by the job type. When the WIP calculation is ran, it will automatically create a journal entry for each job, transferring all WIP job costs to the appropriate cost of sales accounts. Before we run our WIP calculator, let's look at our job GL accounts on our income statement. The income statement for June 2024 does not show any revenue or cost of goods sold yet, as this is before WIP has been processed. Now let's start our standard WIP process. Our first step in WIP calculation process is to run our active job listing report. Our active job listing report is located within Proven Accounting Web in our Reports menu under the Job Reports. During today's demonstration, we will be reviewing our active job listing report before and after each WIP run to compare the differences and watch the calculations. This process is typically done for a group of jobs at once. However, today we are only going to focus on one specific job so we can identify the changes as we move forward. The very first step before we calculate WIP is to make sure we are in balance against our general ledger accounts for deferred revenue and work in process. I have exported my active job listing WIP, and at the bottom of the last page I can review the totals and compare my balances. We are comparing the totals of the active job listing WIP report to our GL balance. Our report shows our deferred revenue total as $163,609.08. And our WIP revenue balance is also $163,609.08. Additionally, our report shows a WIP balance of $121,197.92 and our WIP GL balance of $121,197.91. I am only out of balance by 1 penny, so I'm going to move forward with processing our WIP calculator today. However, if you find you are out of balance by more than a couple of dollars, please send an email to support@canamsys.com. Today we are focusing on the highlighted job. Let's review from left to right. We have our estimated revenue, our estimated cost. This cost comes from our work orders function within our proven jobs database. Our revenue, this is from our actual invoices posted to the job. A zero balance indicates no invoicing has occurred. WIP revenue. WIP revenue is $0 as WIP has not been processed on this job yet. Deferred revenue. Deferred revenue is 0 again because WIP has not yet been processed. GL cost, this is our actual costs posted to our job. WIP transfer is also 0 as the WIP has yet to be processed. Expected cost, based on our general ledger, is $600. And our WIP balance, this is the balance of WIP that will be processed on our job. When we process this WIP balance, will move to our WIP transfer. Now let's go ahead and run our WIP calculator. To run WIP calculator, we'll go to Jobs, Calculations, and WIP Calculator. We'll enter our WIP calculation date. We'll go to Actions, check all jobs, and then we'll go to Actions, and we'll print our WIP report. The report has generated. We can go back to Actions and print Process WIP. Would we like to run WIP calculator? We'll say yes. And here are our journal entries for our WIP calculator. Now we need to post them. So we'll go to Transactions, Batch Posting, we'll create a new record, we'll select our module of General Journal, we're going to choose All Transactions, and we'll say WIP Yes, as they are WIP entries. We'll click Save and Close, and we can see that our transaction is ready to process. Now we can open our transactions and choose to start process. We'll say yes. We can see the status is started. We can close this screen. We'll do the tiny refresh, and our status on our transactions page has also started. Once the status changes to completed, that will indicate that all of our WIP entries for today have been posted. Once the WIP process is done processing, a WIP journal entry is created. As you can see, this journal entry is placing costs in the job type cost account and recognized revenue based on the actual costs and job margin. Now let's run our active job listing WIP report again. The report now reflects the WIP run and the WIP changes. After WIP is processed as of June 30th, 2024, our active job listing report now shows a WIP revenue balance, a deferred revenue balance, a WIP transfer balance, and a 0 in the WIP balance column as WIP has been processed. The calculation for WIP is as follows: costs divided by expected spend percent equals recognized revenue. This revenue is recognized on the income statement before the job is invoiced. Now let's review our income statement since our WIP calculation has been processed. Our income statement now reflects our revenue and costs to our job. Our recognized revenue is $2,000, and our job costs such as materials, labor, and expenses now have a balance. This information matches the journal entry that was posted and matches our active job listing report. Now let's take a look at our active job listing report once again. We can see our report totals for deferred revenue and WIP balance match our GL balances for deferred revenue and work in process accounts, with the exception of the 1 penny we were out of balance earlier. Our WIP balance now shows 0 as all WIP has been calculated. So now we are ready to run our WIP calculation for our month-end process. I have ran our active job listing report and confirmed our WIP and GL balances are in balance. Here is our WIP report after we have invoiced for the month of July of 2024. We now have more information on this report since an invoice was posted. Reviewing from left to right once again, we have our estimated revenue, our estimated costs. Revenue is now $11,964.78 because the job has now been invoiced. We now have a WIP revenue balance as we've run WIP on this job previously. Deferred revenue. This is the balance of revenue remaining to be recognized. This is the balance that will be recognized on our income statement once WIP has been processed. GL costs are our costs posted to our GL account. WIP transfer are our previously recognized WIP costs. Expected costs is our WIP transfer plus our current WIP balance. And our WIP balance are costs that will be transferred during the WIP process. The calculation of deferred revenue is WIP revenue minus revenue equals deferred revenue. This information will update once again when the WIP calculator is ran for our month end of July 2024. I have processed our WIP calculator and now here is our journal entry. Once again, after running WIP calculator, we can see that the process has recognized the revenue and our costs to our income statement account. Now we can see on our income statement we have the current revenue and our current cost of goods sold. Now on our active job listing report, we can see our revenue amount, our WIP revenue, and we still have a balance in our deferred revenue. The remaining balance in deferred revenue is what is left to recognize. The reason there is still a balance is because the job margin is set to 70%. And Proven Solutions is calculating revenue based on costs and the estimated revenue percent. However, the actual margin is 67.63%. The balance of this revenue will be earned when we close the job, which leads us to our final step. WIP revenue is typically ran at the end of the month to finalize WIP and close out completed jobs. Once all job invoicing and job-related costs are posted within Proven Accounting, the final WIP calculator and WIP revenue can be completed. Proven accounting generates adjustment journal entries for any differences between calculated revenue to date and actual invoices posted to the job file. Let's review how to run WIP revenue in our Proven Accounting web database. We'll go to Jobs, Calculations, WIP Revenue. We'll enter the last day of the month for the period we're processing WIP in. We're going to sort by production closed, and I'm only going to select jobs that have a production close date within our Proven Jobs Management platform, as this is the indication that all job-related costs and revenue have been accounted for and posted. So I'll click Production Close column twice, and I'll select my jobs with the date prior to 7/31 of 2024. And now I'll go to Actions, and I'll journal and close jobs. Yes, I'd like to make my entries. And here, the 3 entries for my 3 jobs have been made, and they're already posted. WIP revenue is now complete. These 3 jobs are accounting closed and marked as accounting closed in Proven Jobs and in Proven Accounting. By running our WIP revenue process, our final WIP journal entry is created and our job is marked as accounting closed. The journal entry is created to recognize the remaining balance of revenue based on previous WIP calculations and invoiced amounts. You can see we have placed the revenue amount against the revenue account. Now the income statement reflects the earned revenue for the month and the revenue to date, which matches our job final invoice. This completes our standard WIP process. Once we close the job in our WIP revenue process, the job is no longer on our active job listing report. This was an example created in a training database. It is understood that sometimes there are things that can slow down or prevent the closing process. It is important to understand these messages and how to prevent them. The WIP revenue feature does a great job of letting us know if we can't close a job and why the job cannot be closed. During our WIP revenue process, you may receive some of the pop-up notifications. The job cannot be closed due to open work orders. The job cannot be closed due to unposted time cards. You cannot select this job as it has a WIP balance. And the following jobs have a current or future dated WIP balance. One of the most common alerts is our open work orders message. This alert indicates this job has open work orders and that we are unable to account and close it. Having open work orders could indicate that we have either outstanding costs, revenue, or simply that a placeholder work order has not been closed. It is our suggestion that the jobs be reviewed to ensure all costs and revenue have been accounted for and posted to the job. Once completed, all work orders can be closed. The job cannot be closed due to unposted time cards alert. This alert states that we have time card entries dated prior to our WIP revenue date that have not been posted. The job cost update will need to be ran to post all time cards up to our WIP revenue date. If there are any errors with these time card entries, an exception report will be displayed at the time of running the job cost update tool. Additionally, the exception report can be ran from our Proven Accounting web report menu. You cannot select this job as it has a WIP balance alert. This indicates that there is a balance on our active job listing report that has not been processed through the WIP calculation tool. If you skip running WIP calculation, then there will be a balance remaining to be processed. WIP calculator must be done first. Future dated WIP balance. The following jobs have a current or future dated WIP balance alert tells us that we have an accounting transaction that is after our WIP revenue date. For example, we are processing WIP revenue as of 6/30 and we have costs dated in July. We will not be able to close this job until the month of the last accounting transaction date. Some examples of accounting transactions are time cards, vouchers, invoices, credit card charges, bank withdrawals, and WIP entries. When this alert occurs, the job will not be able to be accounting closed until after the last cost. So if the last accounting transaction is in August, then the job will not be able to be accounting closed until then. That concludes our presentation for today. If you have any questions, please email us at support@canamsys.com.